Okay, finally, let's look at being very mindful of your character panel settings and, if need be, using layer filters. And you're not going to actually hide the layer's visibility when you use layer filters. It just makes it easier to find them regardless of what folder they're in. So let's first just look at when you create your text. A lot of times, especially if you have it locked, like this teacher layer is locked, and if I try to take my text tool and do something here, it's going to say, hey, I can't do this because the layer is locked, because it thinks I'm trying to edit that one. But if I'm just trying to make another one, it is a lot of times easier on projects like that to do them down here. So notice I did this box down here. It's going to go up here, but it's just kind of easier to draw it down here first. Okay. And then of course you can press Control T. Now, what's the big deal about that? Well, because you're going to get a certain size here. And up here, there's 3 boxes. So they all need to be the same size. I can't have this one little and then this next one big. Okay. They have to be the exact same number. So right here, this is an awkward number, 27.59, right? I need that to fit in this box. So first off, a couple of things. We need to bring up the character panel, window character. Character and paragraph are together, by the way. So if you ever need to center what's in your box, then that's where you would go. Now let's look at this one and see if this needs to be centered. So I'm going to turn my red rectangles off and turn it on here. And it looks like they do need to be centered. So for this one, I probably do need to go ahead and set that to center. Now it's going to make your box run away there for a second, but that's just because it was center aligning the box. So do pay attention of how those are going to look in there and whether or not you need to pop into paragraph to center. Okay, now I'm back in here, and it's going to be kind of hard, like when these are put in here, the gap, that's the line spacing, which is called leading in Photoshop. Your leading amount might be too much. I mean, like if I set this to 72, see how far apart they are? And if I point to this and pull in a little bit and let go, I'm making that number smaller so that I can get those a little closer together. So it just depends. You want this to be consistent. Whatever I use for this first box, I have to use all of these exact same settings for the rest. Now I have these tracked. That's where the spacing is modified. So they're closer together. So this actually looks like this. This is what this font should look like. You always want to start at 0 on this and you know, auto on this other one and 0 here, just to make sure you don't have anything weird. And never mess with these hundreds. We never want those to be, we don't want to smash stuff. All right, so let me go ahead and take this up here. I'm going to press Control T, bearing in mind that the words I put in all these other boxes are going to need to be smaller, or are going to be like word wise, because it needs to fit. Now I can't, this is jumping around because of my snap. I'm going to use my arrow key on my keyboard to kind of nudge this so that it looks like it's about where I want it to be. Okay. And that spacing amount looks pretty good, but my font is 15.4 and I want to use something that I can make consistent. So I'm just going to put 15 in here. And that way I know I can use 15 and these same settings for everything else. And I could even, like, just to make this easier, I could probably go 15 as well. Usually the same number works, or a tiny bit littler. I have found. Now these are white, I think, up here. So I'm going to grab a hold of that box real quick and change my font color to white. It almost looks too bright, but that's okay. And so now I've got my first one in there. So now, obviously, I can just Alt and drag, right, to make a copy. And I want to keep them lined up perfectly, right? All right, so there we go. I'm going to double click into this one. And then type in whatever I want the second one to be, which I haven't really decided yet. So my first cat was Kitty. So I know y'all wanted to know that. All right. Now, again, this box needs to be positioned where it needs to go. And we want them all to line up. So we want it to be perfectly lined up. There we go. See that baseline lining up there. Okay. And there that one is. And because I had the centering on, it all looks good. Okay, then again, I can alt drag this box, try to keep that straight with that one. And then I can go in and put whatever other things. Mama Tattoo. And then here I can put Sierra and Alexis. And again, you need to keep your capitalization and stuff matching. So let's see if this fits. Again, if it doesn't fit, I can't change my font size on these, right? I have to decide that I'm going to use shorter words, because once you do your longest one, always do your longest one first so you know it fits, then everything else has to be that same font. Okay? And again, pay attention to your character panel here in your numbers. You want all of these things to match so they look correct. Okay? Now, while I'm on here, let's go look at the teacher one. I'm going to unlock teacher for a second. I made the T taller than the rest of the letters because I wanted it to be tall for this total thing. I'm actually going to make it a little bit taller. So I'm going to point this up because I want it to kind of line up with the word total. But because I've done that, the T and the E kind of look really far apart. So I'm going to move this total box over in a minute, but I want the T and the E to be a little closer. So I'm going to take this E and I'm going to modify between the T and the E. So click between the two. I'm going to modify this, and this is the spacing just between those two letters. So there we go. I just did a -10, which just made them a little bit closer together so it didn't look so gappy. So if you do notice that your words look a little too far apart, you can do that. And then again, remember, when you want to move them, use your move tool. Don't just Control-T everything, because you'll change the font size and stuff. And that wouldn't matter on this. It doesn't matter on this. It doesn't matter on this because it's the only one. But these three are right next to each other. So their font sizes must match. And that means all the things in the font box must match. Okay? So I feel like we've made a good start here. It looks pretty good. Obviously not exactly lined up with what they have because my font is a little bit different. I might want to choose now to try to line this up more with where that other one was. And I could do that now to try to match. But again, I'm not going to get all over you if it's just a tiny bit off or if it doesn't match exactly, because you're going to have different fonts, you're going to have different words, you're going to have different pictures. You know, like if I put a circle here, I might make it a little bit smaller or scoot it over, and I might make it cover part of the R. It's okay if it covers part of the R, you know, that sort of thing. So like this is the same font as this, but it's bigger. So technically I could go ahead and alt drag one of these to give me this one, change it to black. And then, you know, 27 years. Oh, this is a font that doesn't have letters. So, or numbers. So I can't use 27 years for that one, but I'll fix it later. But anyway, you get the gist of it here. And then, of course, I could just make that bigger and position it again. And I can Control-T this one because it's not tied to another box. So it doesn't have to match. Except I need a font that has numbers. Okay. Anyway, this kind of gives you an idea of how to get started. I would personally do your top part. Okay. And then put your background image in before you do anything else. Okay. Now, one other thing to note, you're going to have a lot of layers. Being organized is good. I have all my red rectangles like in one thing. I might want to put all of the words that go with the red rectangles in there too. So my mama, not the 27 years, but the mama and the first cat, kitty, and the first year here. Maybe even the learn about, because that's part of that. And maybe even that white pen arrow. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. If you Control click, you can select individual layers. I shift clicked, which was a bad idea. Okay, I'm going to leave that total and teacher because that's not part of that. And my 27 years is not part of that. And I'm going to move all of these in with my red rectangles. There we go. So that now I have all of that in one nice tidy spot. And I'll just call it rectangle top part. But you're going to want to be super, super careful with making some groups, because otherwise this is going to get super frustrating. Okay. Now there is a button over here, this little white button in your layers panel. This is the filter button. Now this is not to show or hide layers. Remember, if I hold down Alt and click on an eyeball, it'll only show that layer or layer group. And then if I press Alt again, it'll show all of them. Now, if you start clicking elsewhere, it won't. You know, you can only just do it right like that. But if I just wanted, like, say I have like, 30 different text layers and I'm having a hard time because they're in folders, you could click this on and then hit text. And then it shows you all of your text layers. These are indented, so that means they're in folders somewhere. But if I'm just really having trouble finding a layer, I can do that. And that just makes, it hides from here all the layers, but I'm not actually hiding them. I'm filtering. Okay. Now I'm just going to turn this off again. And now we're back to where it was. If I turn it on again, it's the text layer. So if I click this button, then nothing's filtered, right? If I click this button, it's only going to be shapes. So if I'm trying to find a shape, I can click that. If I just want pictures or pixel layers, so my background layer, that's a pixel layer, and then that photo is on there, okay? So that's what these filters are all about. And typically you're going to keep that filter turned off, but just be aware that you have a filter button there. And sometimes that might be useful. So use those layer groups, use those filters if needed to locate things. And good luck. I am excited to see what you come up with.